Did the Detroit Lions just overpay Jack Campbell? Or did they quietly expose the blueprint for how smart teams stay dangerous? Because at first, $81 million for an off-ball linebacker sounds insane. But when you look closer, Detroit didn't just hand out a massive contract. They protected the cap, kept a defensive cornerstone, and sent a message to the rest of the NFC. This isn't just Jack Campbell's payday. This might be the move that keeps the Lions' Super Bowl window wide open.
How much he really likes the Lions as a possible Super Bowl contender of the draft and everything else right here on Locked On Lions. But OTAs, organized team activities, underway today down in Allen Park at 222 Rodwood Drive. And yes, the Lions put Jack Campbell on the podium today to discuss his brand new 4-year, $81 million contract with the team. Before we get to Jacob Robinson, a couple of notes on this contract. Number one, let's start with what Campbell said today on the podium. This is a very humble guy, a Midwestern guy that basically said it was not about money. Now, again, he's now the second highest paid off-the-ball linebacker in the NFL behind Fred Warner of the Niners. And Jack is off of a monster year this past year where he was an all-pro. He was a Pro Bowler. And, coming out after this season, people determine and believe that he's one of the top inside linebackers in the game. But what he said today was very, very interesting about wanting to be in Detroit. Quote, I told Brad this, the number one thing for me this whole entire process was to remain a Lion because I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this organization. Me and my wife absolutely love it here. People have been so nice to us and it just feels like home, end quote. So just take a deep breath and think about how many players came through, whether it was the Silverdome, whether it was early days of Ford Field, how many players did not want to be here anymore? And I get it. Look, Jack Campbell's making a lot of money. He's making over $20 million a year. But for him to say that, for him to say, I wanted to be here, my wife and I like it here, is pretty cool. He went on to also say, quote, let's be realistic here. I already have more than enough money. Wow. So for me, it was more about the principle of it. I just want to be in the elite category because I feel like I'm an elite linebacker, end quote. So want to be in the top range of linebackers, and he's going to be, again, second highest paid off-ball linebacker in the game, or inside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, behind Fred Warner, ahead of Roquan Smith, and players of that ilk. All right? I don't need to be the highest paid, he said, even though the guys around the league would probably appreciate that because it bumps up everything else. So I'm sorry to them. But I just feel like for me, I knew what I wanted in this. I want to help the team in any way possible just to continue to keep the core together. Now, part two of this situation is the Lions not picking up the fifth-year option for next year, getting this deal done, and now that the contract details have been put out there, those like Dave Burkett from the Free Press, Justin Rogers from the Detroit Football Network, putting this stuff out there that, in fact, the Lions saved themselves over $14 million next year by not giving Campbell a fifth-year option that would have paid him around $20 million. Now, again, fans are going to go, but wait a minute. He got 4 years, $81 million starting next year anyway. What's the difference? Well, I'll tell you the difference. The difference, number one, is that the Lions have somebody in their front office who is excellent at navigating the salary cap, monitoring the money, and making things creative enough that this team can afford to be bringing back all of these players. Now, someone said, people, including me, have said on this show, well, how can they afford this guy or that guy? Or there's no way they can keep Gibbs, Campbell, Branch, and Laporta. Let me tell you something. And this was pointed out in Justin's piece in the Detroit Football Network. Campbell's base salaries for the 4 years of extension, just the base salaries, $1.26 million, in 2027, $1.3 million in 28, $15 million in 2029, $2.75 million in 2030. How do you ask they do this? And I'm no good at this stuff, but I'm going to tell you right now. How do they pull this off? The Lions put most of the money in what is called option bonuses. They're effectively a roster bonus, but for cap purposes, they operate like a signing bonus. So his option bonuses count against the cap a lot less than if they were to sign him to just a normal AAV deal. So in 2027, his option bonus is 11.89, 2028, 18.845, 2029, 5 million, and 2030, 15.4 million. With a cap hit of 2.3 million in 2027, 3.7 million in 2028, 1 million 2029, and 3 million in 2030. That's genius. That's really good organizations to great organizations figure out how to maneuver this stuff so they can keep their players around and abide by the rules. So all of this money in option bonuses and everything else is pretty sweet. So in the first year of the extension, 2027, Campbell will count just 5.6 million against the cap. That's a steal. Shout out to Mike Disner, who I still think will end up being president of this organization, and the Lions cap team for how they have maneuvered all of this. Now, in 2029, the cap hit swells to 24 million just based on how all this works out. But again, the Lions will be better suited to absorb that at that point. I was just talking before you came on about the Jack Campbell contract. A lot of option bonuses, and they save $14 million. If they wouldn't have given them if they would have given them the fifth year option and everything else. But as you look at how these teams handle the cap and your law background, it's remarkable how teams just have to have a good cap guy and a good VP like Mike Disner to kind of handle things, right?
Well, especially a team like the Lions, when you draft so well, you put yourself in an enviable position where you have all this young talent. But if you look at guys like Gibbs and Penei Sewell, like these are young players at the prime of their career that are up for extensions. I grew up a Bengals fan. We don't get that too often. You know, we have Burrow, we have Chase, but like most of the first round picks we draft, they don't pan out. And so we just let them go. The Lions are in such a good position where you have to resign these guys, but that comes at a cost, right? And that's where having a cap manager, someone to push the money around, manipulate it, use the void years, like use the bonuses, it becomes so important. And I think it's a huge factor as to why the Lions were able to be pretty surgical this offseason. I mean, getting Cade Mays at like a steal was so awesome too. So like, I think those cap managers are growing in importance as the cap grows.
Listen to you. So you thought Cade Mays was a steal at about $8 million a year, huh?
Well, look, he's getting paid for, I think, the lifetime of his contract less than Tyler Lindenbaum is getting for one season. And this was the number 2 center I know on the Lions board. I talked to Colton Pouncey, our writer at The Athletic. Like, this is a guy who's really going to fit, who's going to solve a lot of problems, I think, for the Lions O-line at that center position for $8 million. I think center's only growing in importance. Like we saw, even just with the way teams are drafting, prioritizing the center position, obviously what the Raiders paid Linderbaum, like getting someone who can fill that role is so valuable.
I mentioned before about Jack Campbell, who spoke today, and he kind of made the point of saying, I don't care about being the highest paid or second highest paid linebacker, off-ball linebacker behind Fred Warner. But what was your reaction to the Campbell deal? And obviously it's a deal the Lions needed to get done. You want to keep as many good defensive players as you can with this team. But what did you think of the deal?
Yeah, you know, Matt, that was actually something I really wanted to chat with you about, to get your perspective on that, because as much as I'd like to pretend I'm an expert on off-ball linebackers and where they should be, like, to me, you know, Fred Warner's like a cut above in terms of the impact he has on the game. It's evident just with the forced fumbles he gets every year, evident whenever you watch the way their 49ers defend the run, just how big his presence is. Last year, like when they lost Nick Bosa at the start of the season, they weren't getting that edge pressure. They still had a solid defense considering like Fred Warner was there. And then when he went out, it sort of lost its luster a little bit. But like, do you think Jack Campbell's in that same category and worthy of that money?
Fred Warner? No. Do I think Jack Campbell's really good? And I'm glad they kept him and they saved $14 million next year by not giving him the fifth year option. And that I love. And it's not our money, right, Jacob? But Am I putting him in Warner's class? Not after one really good year, but man, he was a monster last year.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
was.
And I think that's where it's so important to look at the contractual realities, not to get legal on people. But if you think about like when a player is re-signing with their team compared to going to free agency, I mean, we saw the free agency class this year. It was pretty bleak. Like if you're in the market for a receiver, you're getting either older guys like Romeo Dobbs is one of the premier guys. Like no offense to Romeo, but he's not quite a elite free agent. And so if you let Jack Campbell go to free agency and test those waters, he's probably commanding Fred Warner money in free agency just because you can't get a player of that caliber. And so getting him for less than that and keeping him somewhere where he obviously wants to play and somewhere where the team and organizations believed in him, taking him as a first-round pick for off-ball linebacker is pretty rare, I think is a good win-win.
I know Lions fans get a little bit antsy and jumpy when Brad Holmes doesn't hit a lot of home runs in free agency because that's never been the MO or the motto or the theme of things for Brad. So they say, well, yeah, sign, draft, develop, and keep. But all the guys they're keeping are really good. You mentioned Sewell, St. Brown. You want Goff around. Jamison Williams is back now long term. So is Aiden Hutchinson. The one guy that you got to question is Aleem McNeil and whether he'll get back to the form of a couple of years ago. But Jack Campbell is one of the Lions' best players and was a first-team All-Pro. You want to keep good players. I know it's not sexy to keep the same guys, and oh man, it's so cool to go get free agents. But how do you kind of view how the Lions do things?
Yeah, I think the word that Colton Pouncey uses, who is our excellent beat writer at The Athletic, who covers Lions, is surgical this offseason. And I thought that was such a good way to put it. I mean, bringing Drew Pertzik in to run the offense, addressing sort of some more ancillary pieces, whether it's along the offensive line, at the tackle positions, at center, along the edge with, is it Derek Moore was the second round pick? Like it's been so surgical in addressing the team needs. And man, I remember when the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. And it was like, what are they doing? Brad Holmes is over his skis. He doesn't know. I mean, who are we to doubt what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and those guys are thinking? Like they know what they're doing. And so I have full confidence. And I don't want to, get Lions fans too excited because I know a lot of people in Detroit and I love Detroit. But like, if there's any year where the Lions are going to make it, to me, this is the year. And I'm happy to explain why I think that.
Yeah, please do. I did want to get into that later, but let's do it now because I think, like you said, fourth place schedule. Everybody's talking about the Rams and the Seahawks, certainly, but those teams are getting up there in terms of their age. Why do you think the Lions are a Super Bowl contender?
It goes down to the schedule, like you alluded to. And I know that seems, okay, schedule. First of all, the Patriots had one of the easiest schedules we've seen in this century last season, and they made the Super Bowl. Like
Correct.
An easy schedule matters. So I don't think people should dismiss it. Now, there's a right way to look at a schedule and a wrong way. I think the wrong way to look at strength of schedule is to look at how teams did last season and then judge judge this season's based on that. So for example, like if you're playing a team like the Vikings, like last year they were a middling team. I think they'll be better this year with Kyler Murray. You look at a team like the Titans. Are they going to be as bad as they were last year? Probably not. I think the Lions played them around like week 12 or something. Like they'll be better than last year. But the proper way to look at strength of schedule is to look at projections. What is Vegas projecting in terms of win totals for the Lions opponents? And that's why I'm so bullish on the Lions this season. They have not only an easy schedule, not only a fourth place schedule, Matt, it's the easiest schedule in the entire league.
Yes. Yeah.
Easiest in the entire league. And that says something, especially when you're in a division like the NFC North, where it's hard to get out anyways. You look at their first 4 games. You've got the Saints, easy. You've got the Bills, hard game. And then I think it's like the Jets and the Cardinals and Panthers, like the first 5 games. Sorry, I'm a lawyer. I'm not good at math, but like the first 5 games. Yeah. Compared to last year, the first 3 games, I believe, were the Packers, Bears, and Ravens.
Yes, that's correct.
So like and the Lions still had a decent start last year.
Still went 2-1. Yeah.
Right. And it was that end of season sort of collapse. And it's not like they finished with the worst record in the league, but like to me, that strength of schedule. And it seems like, I don't know, maybe this is me just projecting because I love Dan Campbell and I want the Lions to win. but it's such a coming together of, hey, this team's been through a really great season, a not so good season. They're even hungrier. They're re-examining why things didn't go the way they wanted last year. Now they have the schedule that sort of aligns with the timeline of players like Gibbs and Amon-Ra, where now you're sort of veterans entering your true prime. If they can just stay healthy, I don't see any reason why they can't be the team to come out of the NFC this year.
Jacob Robinson with us from The Athletic. You almost sound like a Knicks fan to an extent, because the Knicks are saying, Knicks fans are going, this is great, but man, we cruise through this Eastern Conference with like the Hawks, who they play in the second round, the Sixers, and then the Cavs, who were just cooked after that first game. It's like Knicks has had an easy schedule, but you know what? The Knicks are really good. Like, you don't get to the NBA Finals. I get it. The East sucks, the NBA and all that, right, Jacob? But
no, you're absolutely right, Matt. And I think the important thing to remember, and this is something that I always come back to, and I don't know why I do this, but like, there's 32 teams in the league. Only one team is going to win the Super Bowl every year. The Seahawks were the best team in the league last year, just like the Eagles were the best team in the league the year before. That's not always the case. Like, the best team in the league doesn't always win the Super Bowl. And also, we don't know who the best team in the league is going to be at the start of the season. The Seahawks, most people wouldn't have even put in that category at the beginning of last year. The Eagles the year before, people probably would have said, yeah, I could see them. The only reason I'm saying this is because, like, the Lions are in that group of, I'd say, like 7 to 8 teams where you're not going to be surprised if they're in the Super Bowl. Now, you pair that talent with the schedule, and now it becomes, okay, you look at the other teams that have top 5 schedules. It's the Saints, the Bengals, go Bengals, the Browns, the Jets, and the Lions at number 1. Like, out of all those teams, I'm taking the Lions Detroit's 5 times out of 5. So that's a huge leg up that I think most other teams that are in that championship window don't have.
You said before you think this is a Super Bowl contender. Who's in their way? Let's start with the division. All right, if you had to pick a team to win it now, who are you taking?
Not the Bears. I think the Bears got lucky on a lot of those one-score games. They have the 27th ranked schedule this year, so it gets much, much harder for Chicago. Packers are always going to be up there. I think getting Micah healthy again is going to make a difference. They also don't have that easy of a schedule. And then the Vikings, like, Kyler Murray's a better quarterback than J.J. McCarthy. How much better? I actually don't know. I mean, giving him a player like Justin Jefferson will definitely help. But I mean, he had Marvin Harrison Jr. and it wasn't the best fit for him. Like, I don't know. I'm not a huge believer in Kyler Murray. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a great one just because he has Kevin O'Connell as his offensive coordinator. So really, like, I don't see why the Lions aren't going to be the top team. And like, I actually don't think it'll be close. Like, actually, I shouldn't say that. The only team I think that'll make it close is the Packers. The Packers can make it close. They have the best team, I think, out of the others. If Caleb Williams makes a big jump and the Bears defense makes a big jump, then they could be up there too. But I'm really skeptical about Chicago. Sorry to all my Bears fans.
All right, what about the rest of the NFC? And obviously, look, it's May 27th. Players will be traded. There'll be some late signings and free agency and everything else. But who else in the NFC? You mentioned Seattle was maybe not the best team, but won it all last year. Who else kind of strikes your fancy in that NFC conference?
Yeah, well, since I'm going out on the limb and I'm saying I'm taking the Lions for the Super Bowl, I gotta hope that we see the Seahawks and the Rams in the divisional round or something where the Lions don't have to play them and they just get the winner of that game, because those are two really tough teams to beat. I think you'd much rather face a team like the Eagles, a team like the 49ers, all the other teams that are sort of in the conversation, the Buccaneers, but they're not at the level. I think the Rams and the Seahawks are a cut above the NFL right now. Obviously very quarterback and injury dependent, but Sam Darnold went on that run, the Super Bowl run. Whether he carries that over, I think, is still remains to be seen. And they lost Kenneth Walker, who really was the MVP, not just of the Super Bowl, but of their playoff run. So it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic of Seattle, like what they look like. I do think there'll be more missing than we realized, but the Rams are just bringing everyone back. They've got such a good team. They've got McVay. They've got a great defense. Like, that's the team that I'd really be worried about. And I hope the Lions don't play until the conference finals.
Yo, mic check 1 to 2, -1, -2. Game over for this video, folks. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to stay in the huddle for more. This is NFL Madness, bringing the heat and signing out.